The cold came fast that night. Not the kind that nips at your face and fades when you step inside, but the kind that sinks into your bones and stays there. The street lamp ahead flickered against the wind, casting weak pools of light across snow that had turned brittle and sharp underfoot. He was walking home from a double shift, shoulders hunched, breath fogging in front of him, when he saw it, something small and dark, motionless beneath the light. At first he thought it was a bundle of rags, maybe a lost glove, but as he stepped closer, the shape took form. Fur, paws, a tail curled tight against a body that wasn't moving. He crouched down, knees cracking in the cold, and reached out slowly. The fur was stiff with frost. The ears, tufted, pointed, were frozen solid. He pulled his hand back, heart sinking. Too late, he thought. But then he saw it, the faintest rise and fall of ribs beneath matted fur. He didn't think. He pulled off his coat and wrapped the small body inside, tucking it against his chest. The cold hit him immediately, but he didn't stop. He walked faster, then jogged, then ran through streets that were empty and silent, except for the sound of his boots crunching through ice. It wasn't until he was halfway home that he noticed the markings, the spots along the legs, the pale belly, the shape of the face. This wasn't a kitten. This was something wild. Inside, the house was warm, almost stifling, after the freeze outside. He laid the small body on the kitchen table under the overhead light, and saw it clearly for the first time. A bobcat. Young, maybe 8 or 9 weeks old, with oversized paws and a coat that would have been beautiful if it weren't matted with ice and dirt. Its eyes were closed, lips pulled back slightly from tiny teeth. He pressed 2 fingers gently against its chest. The heartbeat was there, faint and uneven, like a clock running down. He moved fast, heating pad on low. Warm towels from the dryer, layered carefully so the heat wouldn't shock the body. He filled a shallow dish with lukewarm water and dipped a cloth, dabbing it along frozen ears and paws, watching as the ice began to melt and drip onto the table. The bobcat didn't stir. Its breathing stayed shallow, rhythmic, barely there. He kept working, massaging limbs gently to help circulation, checking the heartbeat every few minutes, talking to it in a low voice he didn't recognize as his own. One night, he told himself, just get it through tonight, then he'd call someone. A wildlife center, someone who knew what they were doing. Someone who could actually help. Hours passed. The kitchen clock ticked louder than it should have. He sat in the chair beside the table, arms crossed, eyes heavy, watching the small chest rise and fall. The bobcat's breathing deepened slightly, its paws twitched. He leaned forward, hope flaring for the first time since he'd found it. Maybe it would make it. That's when he heard the soft padding of feet behind him. He turned. Milo stood in the doorway, orange tabby fur backlit by the hallway light, tail upright and curious. The house cat had been with him for 5 years, calm, easygoing, the kind of cat that napped in sunbeams and ignored everything that didn't involve food or attention. Milo's green eyes flicked from the man to the table, then locked onto the small shape lying there. The man held his breath. He expected hissing, arched back, retreat. Instead, Milo stepped forward, slow and deliberate, ears pricked. He hopped onto the chair, then onto the table, moving with the kind of caution cats reserve for things they don't yet understand. He stopped a foot away from the bobcat and sat, tail curling around his paws. For a long moment, nothing happened. The 2 animals simply existed in the same space, one wild, one domestic, one barely alive, and one fully alert. Then Milo leaned forward, nose twitching, and sniffed the bobcat's frozen ear. He pulled back, considering, then he leaned in again, opened his mouth slightly, and began to groom the ear with slow, careful licks. The man stared. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just watched as Milo, who had never shown interest in anything beyond his own comfort, gently cleaned the frost from the bobcat's face, working along the ears, the top of the head, the small bridge of its nose. The bobcat's breathing hitched once, then steadied. Its eyes remained closed. Milo settled beside it, tucking his body close, offering warmth the heating pad couldn't give. His purr started low and rhythmic, vibrating through the table. The man sat back in his chair, exhausted, bewildered, and something else he couldn't name yet. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, a house cat, who had never seen the wild, began teaching a predator how to survive the night. Morning light broke cold and pale through the kitchen window. The man woke slumped in the chair, neck stiff, one arm numb from the angle. He blinked awake and looked toward the table. The bobcat was still there, but so was Milo, wrapped tight around the smaller body like a living blanket. The bobcat's chest rose and fell with stronger rhythm now. Its paws twitched in sleep. Milo's eyes opened slowly, met the man's gaze, then closed again, as if to say, "I've got this." The man stood, stretched, and called the wildlife center. They told him to keep the bobcat warm, monitor its breathing, bring it in once it's stabilized. Just a day or two, they said. He hung up and looked back at the table. Milo was grooming the bobcat's head again, methodical and patient. By the second day, the bobcat's eyes opened, pale gold, sharp and wild even in weakness. It flinched at the man's approach, but didn't move when Milo nuzzled closer. The house cat brought one of his old toy mice and dropped it beside the bobcat's paw. The bobcat stared at it, confused. Milo batted it gently. The bobcat's ear flicked. Then slowly, a paw reached out and tapped the toy. Milo purred. The man tried separating them that night. He set up a crate in the spare room with blankets and a heating pad, placed the bobcat inside, and closed the door. Milo sat outside and cried, a low, insistent wail that didn't stop. 20 minutes later, the man opened the door. Milo bolted inside and curled around the bobcat immediately. The crying stopped. By the end of the week, the bobcat was eating shredded chicken from the man's hand, teething on furniture legs, learning to walk without wobbling. Its movements were cautious, but gaining confidence. Milo followed everywhere, Miloed loudly whenever the bobcat stumbled or cried. During naps, they tangled together on the couch, wild and domestic, predator and companion, impossible and undeniable. The man stopped calling the wildlife center. He told himself it was because the bobcat still seemed weak. But when he watched Milo teach the little wild thing how to head bump, how to slow blink, how to curl up in sunlight and trust the warmth, he knew the truth. Something unusual was unfolding, something he didn't have the heart to interrupt. The bobcat grew fast, its paws lengthened, its legs thickened with muscle. Play fights with Milo became rougher, sharper, but Milo never backed down. The bobcat pounced with wild precision, climbed curtains in seconds, watched birds through windows with an intensity that made the man's chest tighten. This wasn't a pet, it never would be, but every evening, the bobcat pressed its head against Milo's chest and purred, a sound that didn't belong in any house, yet somehow fit perfectly in this one.
Spring arrived early. The bobcat was no longer small. Its shoulders had broadened, legs grown long and powerful. When it stretched across the living room floor, it looked less like the frozen kitten from the snow and more like what it truly was. A wild predator built for forests, not furniture. Playfights with Milo turned rough. The bobcat's paws landed harder, its teeth flashed sharper. But Milo never flinched, never hissed, never stopped trusting. The man knew he couldn't wait any longer. He called the wildlife center again. They told him the bobcat was healthy, strong, ready for transition back to nature. You did the right thing keeping it alive, they said. Now you have to do the right thing and let it go. He hung up and looked at Milo, curled on the couch beside the bobcat, grooming its ears with the same care he'd shown that first frozen night. The man's throat tightened. Letting go meant breaking the bond Milo had built, the bond that had saved the bobcat's life. He built an enclosure in the backyard, large, open, with climbing platforms and hiding spaces. The bobcat explored it immediately, instinct kicking in. It stalked insects through the grass, climbed to the highest perch, scanned the tree line, with nose lifted to catch scents the man couldn't name. It looked free, it looked right. But every evening, as the sun dropped low and the air cooled, the bobcat pressed against the glass door, separating the enclosure from the house. Its eyes locked on Milo, who sat on the other side, paw raised against the glass. They stayed like that for hours, wild and domestic, separated by a barrier. Neither understood. The man sat in the kitchen and stared at his hands. The bobcat was strong now, independent. It didn't need him anymore, but it needed Milo. and Milo needed it. He'd seen the way his house cat cried when the bobcat stayed outside too long, the way Milo refused to eat until the door opened, and the bobcat padded back inside for the night. The wildlife center called with a date. A team would come. They'd supervise the release in a nearby forest preserve, monitor the bobcat's adjustment, ensure it could survive on its own. It was the right thing, the responsible thing, the only thing that made sense. But as the man watched the bobcat press its face against the glass, one more time, reaching for the cat who had saved its life, he wondered if doing the right thing always had to hurt this much. The morning came too fast. The wildlife team arrived with crates and paperwork, and calm voices that made everything feel final. The man and Milo walked the enclosure one last time. The bobcat brushed against both of them, head to the man's leg, nose to Milo's face. Then it turned toward the open forest and walked forward without looking back. The man held Milo close as the bobcat disappeared into the trees, supervised by staff who promised to monitor its progress. The house felt wrong after that. Too quiet, too still. Milo wandered from room to room, crying softly, a sound the man had never heard from him before. The house cat sat by the glass door for hours, waiting. The man tried distracting him with toys, treats, attention. Nothing worked. At night, Milo slept in the spot on the couch where the bobcat used to curl beside him, nose pressed into the cushion, as if searching for a scent that was already fading. Weeks passed. The man checked his trail camera obsessively, hoping for something, anything that might ease the guilt. Deer, raccoons, nothing unusual, until one evening in late spring, when he reviewed the footage and stopped breathing.